Hello, and welcome to Pod for Cure, the podcast brought to you by All for Cure, discussing healthcare for patients with myeloma, their caregivers, and everyone in between. My name is Sarah, and today I am joined by the Northwest Multiple Myeloma Fighters Support Group Facilitator, Chris Beebe. Hi, Chris. How are you doing today?
Doing quite well, thank you. Nice to finally see you in person.
Yeah, it's exciting. I'm glad we got to connect. Now, before we kind of get into your role as a support group facilitator, I'd love for you to maybe tell me a little bit about yourself.
I'm Midwest born and raised, went to college in the Midwest. And of course, after a very quiet beginning, I changed majors senior year to Asian studies. And that brought me overseas. I ended up working and living overseas for about 16 years on and off during my career in Taiwan, Hong Kong, and China. And that's also where I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma.
Wow, that's really amazing. Do you speak different languages?
I speak Mandarin, some Japanese.
Wow, that's incredible. I was in a Mandarin class for about 2 weeks, and it is an intense language. I commend you.
It's a difficult language, but being immersed in the culture, it's easier to learn it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I had terrible time with French, so I don't know why Mandarin came easier, but it did.
I can't speak French either. So you were diagnosed overseas. If
I
you don't
was.
mind me asking, would you be interested in sharing your myeloma journey up to this point?
Sure. I was living with my family over in Shanghai, China, and on a bus one day, bus had to slam on its brakes. My arm hit a pole, and I ended up with a bruise on my bicep, and the bruise just kept on spreading from my bicep all the way to my elbow. So I knew something was wrong. So we went and saw a doctor, and he said, I don't think it's anything to worry about. We'll just take your blood and I'll get back to you tomorrow. Well, he called 3 hours later and said, please come in. I came in and he said, you are very anemic right now. You need to go to Hong Kong to go see a hematologist because there's definitely something wrong. Family and I said, okay, well, it's not any big deal. We took a pack for 4 days to go down there and said, we'll just enjoy Hong Kong while we're down there. What a mistake. We went down and saw the hematologist, and he looked at the results and then did a few other tests and said, you've got cancer, and did a bone marrow biopsy and found out a day or so later that things were pretty bad. About 80% of my bone marrow was gone. And unfortunately, he misdiagnosed me. He thought I had Waldenstrom's disease instead of multiple myeloma, which is similar in many ways, but also there are some key differences. But if you're not used to myeloma, it's easily misdiagnosed. And I ended up in the ICU for 6 weeks because of the mistreatment. And my lungs filled up with fluids, my kidney stopped working, my liver swelled, my heart went to 170 beats a minute. I was in fairly bad shape. I lost 30 pounds in 2 weeks, and it wasn't good, but they stopped treatment and they got me back to more or less health. And once I was able to understand what was going on again and things were working well, my brother who lived in Seattle and a good friend who was in medical devices, they both began contacting different cancer centers in the United States. And we settled on SCCA because I had family in the area, and it was a tremendous center for supporting blood cancer. They didn't want me at first because I was in bad shape, but then they accepted me when I got in better shape. And they medevaced me to Seattle, spent a week in the hospital, getting all the tests done that needed to be done. And then getting my heart back under control again. And then I started treatment. The rest is fairly routine. I had 6 months of treatment, had a stem cell transplant, 3 years of remission. Then I had a relapse and had a year of treatment there. And now I'm in the middle of another relapse. It was a rough journey, but it also taught me some important lessons, such as always get a second opinion for any big decisions. And we were in the middle of nowhere, didn't know what we were doing. And we went with a doctor who we believed in, and he was an expert. That was what had me end up in the hospital. Also, see a myeloma specialist because it's a very strange and difficult to understand disease. So I learned that the hard way. And the third was to always stay positive. ICU nurse came to see me one night late when I was in probably the worst shape ever, asked me about my faith, what I believed in, and said, you have 2 jobs. One job is to eat, because you don't eat, you're not going to be here. You got to be here for your family. Second is you've got to stay positive no matter what, because if people come in and they're down, you make them positive, you come out more positive. If they come in positive and you're down, they go away less positive, and then you're down even further. So always look on the bright side. And that's sort of all that advice has guided me ever since, and it's been key to really doing well against myeloma.
That's a really intense diagnosis story. Were you familiar with myeloma before you were diagnosed?
Had never heard of the disease. My brother had non-lymphoma Hodgkin's, so I knew something about blood cancers, but never had heard of myeloma.
I've found that that's can be a common experience for myeloma patients to be
Right.
diagnosed with something that you've never heard of before, and finding information that is accurate and helpful, regardless of a misdiagnosis, which is a worst case scenario, can be super, super difficult. I think that that's why I'm really excited to talk to you about your role as somebody in a support group, because I feel that myeloma communities are a really good way for patients, especially newly diagnosed patients, to become informed and learn more about something that has dropped into their life that they maybe don't even know where to start. What was your first experience with myeloma support groups?
Well, right after about 3 months after my stem cell transplant, a group in Seattle held the Defeat Myeloma fundraiser. And I had seen that card at the SCCA, and I said, I should go do this. So I raised a little money in a couple of weeks and went there, met a bunch of myeloma patients, and I had no idea there were so many. And they told me about a support group in the Seattle area, which is called the Northwest Multiple Myeloma Fighters, which we just call Fighters. I might as well go. Let's see what I can do. And I went there the first time, and I think, like many people, say, okay, well, it's a meeting. It was interesting, but what can it get me? I don't need it. I'm better now, etc. But then I thought a little more. I said, well, I could use a little more education. Why don't I go back, give it a second try, see what happens? And that just got me hooked, because I met people, and you got the support you needed, you got advice, you got education. And just ever since then, I've been with the group.
So Fighters group, in reading about it, I saw that it has an actually really long history. Can you tell more about the group itself?
It's in the area. It's the only support group that I know of in this area. And after I joined it, doctors had asked me if I was going to it, etc. A group of patients and their caregivers formed the Fighters in 1998, when there wasn't really a lot of support throughout the United States. One of the caregivers, his wife, passed on shortly after, as did the other founders. So he ended up running the show for 22 years, which is really commendable on his part, to help people when he didn't even have the disease. But Tom Blakely's done a fantastic job setting it up. And since he was the only one in the Northwest region, he made it sort of outreach to everyone. So we have people in Canada, in Oregon, all the way to Colorado, down to California, that have joined us and stayed with us, or have moved and stayed with us. It was put together for education, support, and service. And they've done a great job. I guess we have over 350 people on our email list. It's a pretty amazing group.
What does a typical meeting look like with Fighters group?
A lot of the meeting stuff follows something similar, but there are always changes to it. But we start off with an hour of a speaker. So we get educational speaker each time. We try and either find areas that are hot topic right now, such as when CAR T cells came out, or areas of interest such as physical therapy or new treatments. So we have doctors, nurses, attorneys, etc., all come talk to us. And for an hour they talk, and then we have a lot of give and take questions, etc. And then we have an hour of patient roundtable, where new patients introduce themselves, other patients either tell us about new things they've done, so that everyone can get excited because you want to share the positive news, or if there are concerns or questions, or again, a hot topic, if they need to understand things. The group is pretty large, and we have anywhere from 20 to 60 people at a meeting. So we are able to share a lot of information, a lot of experiences, and I think that's what makes it pretty special. And then afterwards, we put together some notes, about what the presentation and the meetings were like and send it out to all the people, especially people that can't attend meetings for whatever reason. So we try and spread the education around as much as we can and try and keep the whole group connected.
That's awesome. When did you begin getting more involved in Fighters, and what exactly is your role with them?
At first, I was just a member there, but then Tom Blakely had done everything himself for so many years, and you could see he was a bit overwhelmed from time to time. So we went up and asked him if there's anything we could do to help, and we got a little job here, a little job there, and just on and just started to build, I guess. And then Tom wanted to wrap this up. He was getting a little older, and 22 years is a long time to run a group. So he decided it was a good time to move on. And he asked me if I wanted to lead. And he was wise enough to not just dump it all in my lap, but he brought a board on. So we have a board of 10 to 12 people that help with decisions about the group, which way to go, speakers, etc. And then they do things such as we have a lady that's in charge of membership. So anyone that's new writes to her, she follows up, tries to keep the membership rolls accurate, etc. We have people who greet when we have someone come to a meeting so that everyone's always welcome, so they don't wander into a meeting and not know what they're doing. We have someone in charge of fundraising for just making a little money so we can make donations and keep the group going, etc. So we have a really good group of people supporting it, but also try to get as many people interested and active.
That's incredible. Could you tell me a little bit more about your role as a facilitator?
As a facilitator, I help guide the meetings. So when we have meetings, I help make sure that people stay on task, shall we say, because sometimes people tend to wander off and we get on different subjects. So you want to focus because we only have 2 hours each month to talk. I also help set up schedules for the meetings to try and coordinate it so everyone can attend, and also find speakers, because there are a lot of speakers around the United States, and it's sometimes hard to locate someone who has the time to talk to you. So it's a lot about trying to coordinate the meetings and set them up. I also find information and pass it to the group and sort of monitor the emails to make sure that the emails are, again, on tasks. And then I work with the board, as we call it here. I don't know everything. I definitely don't have all the knowledge and experience. And to have other people who have had myeloma for a while and have different experience, to have them join up and lend their support and knowledge is a great thing. And we help move the group forward. So it's busy, but it's really rewarding. You learn a lot. And when people write and say, that was a really good meeting, I mean, that's exactly what you need. It really helps fire you up. And I mean, just you look at the members, and when members step up and when they contribute, that's what's exciting, because you only can put people in the right place and you can't do everything. And then to have them support, give their experiences, have them come up with ideas, I think that's what's key to a support group, is just unlocking everyone's potential. And not everyone knows what they have until the situation comes up. But once they open up, that's what's exciting. So to be able to guide the group, give everyone the platform to talk, that's what the benefit is. It really feels good to see that happen and to just listen to the people and have them discover something.
It sounds like you guys stay really connected, both in person and online. A big question that I have is just a little thing called the global pandemic hit about a year ago. And I was wondering, did you guys have to adapt? Do things look differently now?
It's pretty tough at first because it got shut down pretty quickly and we weren't sure what to do. And then we are fortunate that we have some good support from the IMF, the International Myeloma Foundation. And they have started many of the support groups throughout the United States. And they were kind enough to offer the groups the ability to use their Zoom for no charge. So underneath their license, they spread out this Zoom license to all their groups. And for the last, whatever, year and a half now, we've been able to piggyback on their license. So we've had our meetings. So without their support, it would have been much more difficult. So we're very thankful that they were able to do that. And it's different because we don't have quite as many people in the meetings, but it's also easier for many of the older people to listen in, because on video, it's so much clearer than in person if you're not sitting in the right place. If a speaker turns his head when you're in person, a lot of the older people might not be able to hear it. But with a computer, it's so much easier. It's easier to see the slides and things. So the online meeting has been a real benefit, because we've also attracted people from pretty far away that didn't even have a support group before. So that's been a great benefit. As we go forward, once we're back to in-person meetings, I think that it's always going to be a hybrid meeting, because you're going to want to reach out to people that are far away. So it changed it. It made it more difficult at first, but then people made the adjustments. And as we go forward, I think in person to person is very important for the connections you can make and for the support, because there's a lot of emotional support you need. But online is also going to be key to reaching people in that can't move as easily as others, or that are farther away and still want to become part of the group. So it changed it, but it probably changed it for the better in the long run.
I think that's great. I'm glad you guys were able to adapt to a hybrid model. I can definitely understand it being difficult at first, just
Yeah.
dealing with all the technology. So going off of that, Chris, and just your extended knowledge of support group, do you have any advice for myeloma patients, or even just patients in general, who are considering joining a support group?
I definitely think you need to join one, because you never know what you're missing. And again, myeloma is a very complicated disease. To get the education is key, because there's so many places to get it and you can get overwhelmed. And I think that support groups are a great place for that. It's also wonderful to have support, because I've talked with several myeloma patients who didn't even know another myeloma patient, and they were really lost. And to have someone in there to talk to support, who's gone through similar experiences, I think is key to a lot of people. And the thing is, you don't always have to be there. We've had people with us for a number of years, and then when they're in a very good place, myeloma isn't always high on their radar. They said, okay, it's time to back off a little bit. So they don't come to the meetings for a while. And they apologize, but I tell them, you're in a better place. You do what you need to do, because we'll always be here when you need us. So you just have to live your life as you want to, but to be able to get the solid foundation, to make the connections, to have the support you need, I think it's key for anyone, especially in the beginning, just to be stabilized and to know that others have gone through the same thing and that you're not alone.
I think that is incredible advice, and I hope it reaches the people that need to hear it. Thank you so much, Chris. I've had such a really wonderful time talking to you today. I wanted to just open the floor for any kind of closing comments that you may have.
Support groups definitely have a key reason for a lot of patients. It's not always something that people need, but there are always key times in your life that you need it. Myeloma is a crazy disease. Try and find an expert, and there are, I believe, about 250 spread throughout the United States. You need to find something, because they found it's, I think, 20 to 40% better results when you have your treatments guided by an expert than just by a regular oncologist, because they know what's going on. There's great support out there, such as All for Cure is something that a lot of people need to take a look at, because it does have some great benefits for a great majority of patients. I think they can learn a lot and benefit from that. So look at the different groups out there, look at the support groups, and make sure you get an expert on your side. And when you're doing that, you should be off to a pretty good start to your journey.
Thanks so much for your wisdom today, Chris. It was really wonderful to pick your brain and learn more about you. Thank you again, and I hope you have a really wonderful day.
You too. Thank you very much for the chance to talk.
Thank you all for listening to this episode of Pod for Cure. If you or someone you know has multiple myeloma and would like to register with All for Cure for free, you can visit allforcure.com.